Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And I hope you all had a good holiday break. We didn't actually leave the house for several days and just kind of stayed cozy inside. The weather wasn't really ideal. So it was very quiet in the sense that we didn't travel and didn't have any company other than my mother-in-law. But with having two young kids, it is never really quiet in my house. It's actually quite noisy. I don't even know why little kids constantly have to scream when they talk and communicate. And I'm not saying it's out of anger either. It's literally pure joy. They're just running around screaming and having the time of their lives. It's a lot. I get overstimulated quite easily by all the noise. And my daughter, she's just one of those kids that is constantly humming and singing to herself. And as cute as it is, it can drive me insane. But we did enjoy our break, and they truly are at a really fun age now, and they understand the whole concept of Thanksgiving. So it was really cute when we were asking them, what are you thankful for? And of course, there was a lot of gratitude for their toys, and then for mommy and daddy and each other. And that made me really happy to see that they appreciate, number one, what they have as far as material items. And then, of course, the love that we have for them. I so remember what it feels like to be single and dreaming of the day that I would have my own family. So I am extremely grateful for the health and love of my kiddos and husband. But now that the holiday break is over and everyone is back in their routines and we eased back into our routine, I felt this strange contrast. Inside of our home, things were settling, government shutdowns over, people are getting their SNAP benefits, their paychecks. But it just still feels like collectively, we're all unsettled in a way that I couldn't ignore, we're all back at school and work now. Everything's back to normal, but I don't know if that's necessarily what's reflected everywhere, and what's happening in the country is not reflecting back to me any kind of sense of normal at all. We've seen a lot unravel, not just even in this past year, but over the last few years. There's a lot of mistrust in every system you can think of, science, medicine. I think a lot of that got spurred with the handling of the pandemic and vaccines. There's a lot of mistrust in government, mistrust in the school systems, and we're watching access to reproductive rights shrink and voting rights challenged and immigrants treated without basic dignity. And we've seen a lot of geopolitical alliances shift and economic policies that seem to favor only the wealthiest people in society. I mean, I could go on, and honestly, you probably could too. But the point is this: all of it is happening in ways that defy basic conventions, what we've normalized, what we were taught to expect. We used to think these systems were unshakable and stable, and I believe we're witnessing their instability right before our eyes. And I'll be honest, I've had my moments of realizing where I was still relying on those same illusions, thinking they would hold, thinking they were built for all of us. So it's uncomfortable when you realize that the ground you trusted wasn't actually steady at all. And I wanted to turn this concept into a series, specifically all the different catalysts that shake up what we've normalized. Today's the first episode. We're going to dive into Trump as being a catalyst. It's actually going to be a two-parter, so stick with me and let's dive in. Welcome to the Respond Podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Reigle, an intuitive and longtime mediator with over 20 years of experience helping people move through conflict, but not just to resolve it, to listen to it, because conflict is here to reveal what we've outgrown or no longer aligned within you, around you, and in the world that you move through. Guys, we are living in a time when it feels like the world is coming apart politically, socially, spiritually, all of it. But here's a concept I want you to think about. What if these systems coming apart were never really built on stable ground to begin with, like I said? What if the stability we thought we had was just an illusion of stability? So as we watch the systems fall apart, so goes the illusion that they were ever truly built for our highest good to begin with. Guys, we put all of our collective faith in these constructs. We knew we could put our faith in the ideas that the American dream and living a healthy, prosperous life was possible because all the systems of democracy would support us in that endeavor. We believed they would hold up against any threat. And in some instances, they have. But you know what? Fractures are showing up. And they show up when there's misalignment. Cracks form along the foundation. For so many of us, these systems helped feed us, secure our freedoms, keep us healthy, all the things so that we could thrive. But they did not do that for everyone. They did not keep everyone fed, everyone employed, everyone educated, and everyone free. They left some out. You have to be at the right income level or intelligence level to go to a really good college. You have to have access to health insurance to get good health care. You have to be a man to get reproductive care without the government interfering. You have to have a job that lets you off work to be able to vote in person where the mail-in ballots are not allowed. The rules of engagement vary depending on who you are and where you live within the system. So as the illusion of stability starts to lose its grip, we all start to see it. The fractures show up as tension, conflict, shouting, grief, and polarization. Because illusions don't dissolve quickly and quietly. It's a shock to the system. Think of it this way. When a false structure has been held in place for so long, you're going to need a massive shock to shake it loose. Probably not just one shock either, usually several, like in a wave, one after the other, until the illusion finally breaks free and the new system can emerge. A new system that will actually be more aligned with the collective and not leave others out. Here's something I really want everyone to think about. Every disruption to our so-called norms, conventions, every corrupt leader or dictator, every movement, every act of destruction is showing us something about ourselves as a collective. It's feedback from life itself, asking us to evolve beyond what's no longer working for us collectively. There's meaning in the madness, truly. And that's what this new series, Conflict as a Catalyst, is all about. Each episode of this series will look at major points of global conflict like terrorism, Putin's reign, Trump's rise, the polarization of truth itself. I have a lot of ideas, and as current events unfold, I will have more. And I'm open to any ideas that you may have, so feel free to comment with them. But I want to explore what these forces are revealing about and to us. Because conflict, even at the global level, follows the same principle it does in our personal lives. It emerges to expose what's no longer aligned, where we have outgrown within us, between us, and across the systems that we've built. The illusions that need to evaporate. We'll look at these events not through politics or ideology, but through the lens of energy, consciousness, and evolution. And when I say consciousness, I mean our collective awareness, the way that we all think, feel, and make meaning together as humans. I want to focus on why are these patterns showing up now, and what collective blind spots and hidden truths are being pulled to the surface. How can we respond individually, maybe even together, in ways that move us forward instead of deeper into division, because we have a lot of division right now. And, this is not going to be about defending or shaming any one person or group of people. I want folks to start recognizing that every disruptor, no matter how destructive they appear, carries a function which is to expose, to accelerate, to purge what's ready to transform. It's all for our benefit. So in this first episode, I want to explore Trump from this angle, specifically the frequency he carries and what that energy is reflecting back to us in this moment. Why was this type of energy magnetized into the collective field right now? What does Trump's tone reveal about our current vibration, our collective relationship with truth, with power, with identity? Why were we as a collective consciousness primed for someone with this particular frequency to rise to the forefront of our reality and shape our lives? I think this is going to be a really revolutionary way of thinking about Trump's administrations and what he represents. So if you're able to stay with me through this lens, I think it can help ease maybe some distress you may feel about what's unfolding around you and within you. It's going to help bring perspective, and more importantly, it's going to give all of us momentum to move forward in a more grounded and peaceful state of being. Okay, so let's start at the beginning and remember what it was like long before Donald Trump entered the political scene. Because guys, the cracks in the foundation were already there. We just weren't looking too closely at them. We ignored them. We chose to look the other way. I mean, remember the bank bailouts when folks were forced to foreclose on their homes? That angered a lot of people because it was the banks that got people into those mortgages to begin with, and then used the people's money to stay afloat while the people lost their homes. Look, government, the media, big business, even education and religion all started to feel very out of alignment prior to Trump's rise in the political scene. It was becoming increasingly obvious that leaders forgot who they were meant to work for. So instead of putting people first, the goal became protecting power, making money, keeping up appearances. And this is just, my perspective. Everybody has their own perspective about that time. But I think that we can all agree that our leaders in these systems stopped caring about the common good, and that the balance was tipping in the opposite direction. And I think that most of us could feel that shift. I mean, that quote, "America is the best," stopped being a sign of pride and started sounding more like a defense mechanism, a way to avoid looking at where we were in this country and where we were falling short. We told ourselves stories about freedom and opportunity, but there was an obvious gap between what was promised and what was really happening. And the systems in place weren't holding the people anymore. And deep down, everyone knew it. Trust was eroding. People stopped believing in their government would be there for them when they needed it most. No one really felt like their representatives truly represented their interests. So when I know there's people who don't rely on the government at all, and then there's some people who really do rely on the government and, Social Security, SNAP benefits, healthcare from the government, Medicare, and then there's folks that don't rely on all. But we all have representatives, right, that pass laws. And I don't know how many people really feel like their representatives really do truly represent their interests. It's a lot of talk. We've watched corruption grow, money shape morality, and power collect in the hands of those least able to use it wisely. So when the outer world no longer reflected our deeper values, something in us started to ache. That disconnect between what we said we stood for and how we were actually living created a pressure that couldn't stay hidden anymore. So when that kind of misalignment builds up, when the cracks spread wide enough, guess what? Life is always going to send an energy strong enough to expose it, bring it to the surface. And that's what happens when evolution wants to move us forward. It's going to send a disruptor to get our attention. From where I sit, both as a mediator and just as a human watching all this unfold, Trump didn't create these fractures. He amplified what was already cracked beneath the surface. Whether we like him or not, Trump is here to disrupt the status quo. We can all agree on that. He has shaken up what we used to call normal. He's what I think of as a collective disruptor, someone who embodies the collective illusions he's here to expose. He's the mirror reflecting back all the myths, We've been living under the myths of American exceptionalism, political decorum, moral superiority, integrity, even equality, when in fact we can all see now that the America we called exceptional, the one built on freedom, liberty, and justice for all, didn't actually include everyone. It just included those with the correct race, gender, sexual orientation, income level. List goes on. So Donald Trump doesn't just reveal those illusions, he embodies them in the most exaggerated way possible so that we can't look away, deny them, or pretend they're not real. He does not respond to shame or societal pressure. He stays in this embodied state to show all of us what needs to be seen. It's so obvious. I want to say that again. He does not respond to shame. He can say cruel, provocative, politically incorrect things and feel no shame. He falls asleep in meetings. No shame. He pardons without shame. He acts the way he wants, irregardless of what is ever expected of a president to act. We needed someone like this in this moment so we can all see what we've refused to see. The racism, the misogyny, the corruption, the performative politeness that's covered up deep dysfunction for generations. He's bringing it all to the surface. It's no longer swept under the rug and whispered about behind closed doors. People are so out in the open now with how they feel about everything. And in some ways, I kind of find that quite liberating because I want to know if you're a closeted misogynist. Now you're just out there expressing your views and I can make the decision about whether or not I want to invite you into my life, right? And Trump is here to show us in a way that's loud, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore just how misaligned and unstable all of our systems and institutions that we have normalized have become. So I hope as you're hearing this, you can picture it clearly, how his unapologetic behavior doesn't create these issues. It reveals them, and he's giving permission to others to reveal them too. He's making visible what's been sitting in our society all along. The cruelty of it all is exposed. And part of why this matters so deeply to me is because conflict has always been my portal. It's where I've grown the most in my life. So when I look at all this, I can't help but see the same pattern. Breakdowns that are trying to become breakthroughs both collectively and personally. But here's the thing, that exposure of, what Trump has done didn't happen all at once. It comes in waves. I mean, he had a first administration, a break, and then a second administration. Because when something this deeply rooted starts to unravel, we usually try to patch it back together before we're ready to let it fall apart completely. That's human. That's exactly what happened after his first term. There was an interruption to his energetic influence. That 4-year gap where we collectively hit pause during Biden's term. We picked the one person collectively. Think about it. He represented the quote unquote stability of the past. This older politician who's been around forever, who would bring back the norms and conventions that we were all wanting to cling to. He literally represented the past. We thought maybe the system would correct itself and we could go back to quote unquote normal. Plus, I think that there was a collective exhaustion we were all experiencing from so much being exposed at once. We needed to hit that pause. But the pause didn't actually heal the fractures. Never does. It just pushed them below the surface for a little while. And during that time, and think about it, the aftermath of the pandemic, there were mass protests going on around the country. There was exhaustion, even more distortion started to, rise to the surface, which is why I believe Trump's energy was called back in. Because remember, he embodies the full extent in the most exaggerated way possible, all the distortions that need to be out in the open. Trump was ushered back onto the stage so that it would be impossible to look away. Think about it this way. Trump's first term cracked open what was hidden. It exposed the fractures that were already there. He just brought them to light in leadership and truth and identity and how power was being used. But as a collective, we weren't ready to face the full extent of that imbalance yet. We saw it, but we still hoped the system could fix itself without us having to change too much. So we brought in a figure from our past to try and heal it. That pause, those 4 years under Biden, acted like a breathing space. It gave the collective time to catch our breath, to calm the initial shock, and to see what we actually valued. For some, it might have brought some relief. For others, frustration and anger. But either way, it created contrast, right? It showed us what still wasn't working, even without the loud disruptor on the main stage. And that space, more distortion just rose to the surface. Distrust, division, exhaustion, disillusionment. Not because Trump was gone, but because the deeper issues were still unresolved. So then when Donald Trump reemerged for his second administration, it wasn't just history repeating itself. It was the energy returning for a second look, saying, did we learn what we needed to learn from the first round, or do we still need this mirror to get clearer? The interruption was the collective pause between the two waves of revelation. The first term revealed the cracks, the gap showed us what we hadn't healed, and this return is showing us what we're finally ready to let dissolve, what's no longer working for us, and then let emerge what is. So one thing I want to do to highlight from a conflict as a catalyst lens is that the disruptor is not usually the one who ushers in what's trying to emerge. The disruptor shakes the illusions loose and helps break them down. So even though Trump is a builder by trade, his energy isn't here to build the new. It's here to break apart what's no longer sustainable. He embodies everything that's out of balance so it can collapse and make space for something more honest to take its place. And it's interesting that the theme of tearing down is showing up in the physical world too. Parts of the East Wing of the White House are literally being demolished right now. The White House has always been more than just a building. It's a symbol of power, of leadership, of the American story itself. So when we're watching any part of it come down, it can be emotional for some. For many, it might feel even disrespectful, a loss of something sacred, something built and maintained by generations of taxpayers. And that reaction makes sense. It mirrors the pain of seeing something you trusted or took pride in being dismantled in a way that doesn't feel honorable to you or to all of us. But at the same time, on a symbolic level, it mirrors what's happening everywhere else. An old structure, literal and energetically, is being exposed and broken open. Whether we see it as a careless destruction or as a necessary clearing depends on kind of where we stand and what we value. Either way, it's showing us something deeper about, this moment in history, that we're at the end of one story and standing on the edge of another. So this is where our choice comes in. When something we've identified with starts to fall apart, our instinct, because we're human, is to fight, to blame, to defend, or to resist it, right? But fighting a disruptor head-on doesn't work. It only keeps us emotionally tied to the very energy we want to move beyond. That's why so many people feel drained and hopeless, because we keep getting pulled into the same cycle of reaction. The most powerful way to shift this isn't through more resistance to Trump. It's through energetic detachment. And what I mean by that is learning not to identify with the energy we no longer want to live in. So Trump's presence acts like a sorting mechanism, right? It divides the collective into extremes, love or hate, allegiance or opposition. But both sides are feeding that same current. Every time we react, we stay plugged into that charge. But when we step back, observe what's going on, and then hold clarity about the situation, oh, he's just here to shake up what's no longer working for us. Identify that. The current is going to lose its power. When we can look at it this way, we can see it as an invitation. To do this, we can first be aware that our current systems do not work for our collective good. I think we all need to kind of be in agreement about that. So they're going to need to dissolve, which is happening regardless. Then we can accept it, which does not mean we surrender or we like how it's being done. It just means gracefully participating and letting go of what is no longer working. Then finally, you can invite in what is trying to emerge just by acknowledging within yourself that something new is coming. When you're able to participate in what is emerging, the fear or loss of control you might feel about your quote-unquote conventions or norms disintegrating, that's going to lessen. You're going to start to feel excited about what's coming because it's going to serve the highest good. All the illusions of the past are falling away. They become irrelevant. All right, let's pause here for today. In this first part, we looked at why Trump's energy showed up in our collective story, what it's revealing about the illusions we've been living under and the systems that are starting to dissolve. We explored how his presence functions as a disruptor, shaking loose what can't stand anymore so something truer and more aligned can take its place. But this story isn't just about him. Next week in part 2, I'm going to shift the focus to the movement around him, his MAGA followers, because they carry very different energetic purpose in all this. Trump exposes the cracks, but his followers, I believe, are revealing something else. And understanding that part of the dynamic is key to seeing how both sides, those who idolize him and those who oppose him, are shaping what comes next. So take a breath, let this sink in, and join me next week for part 2. And as always, don't react, but respond with intention. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.